And then the last thing I want to talk about specifically about intuitive eating is the difference between a craving and a binge. Because a lot of the times when we hear cravings, we think of like crazy, oh my God, I have to have it right now. My life is over if I don't have it.
Right.
That's what we
like
think of with
tearing
craving.
into a
And
whole pie or like
all the
a giant
cookies.
bag of chocolate.
Yeah, something.
Yeah.
So you think a lot of posts on social media highlight different ways to beat the cravings. So like, for example, you're craving pie, or like, oh, well, here's this cheater low cal pie, and that doesn't do what it needs, because a craving is your body's way of telling you it needs something, whether that's, you need more sugar or you need more fat. Like sometimes I'll get a craving for something salty, and so I'll eat something, savory, and sometimes I'll get something, a sweet craving.
Mm-hmm.
And you go get something sweet. That's just your body's way of telling you what it needs.
Uh-huh.
And the more we ignore it and try to fight it, the more likely you are to binge on that later, especially if you have a history of it.
Right. Yeah. Yes. So putting off those cravings can be really bad. I do this with my nutrition clients, my one-on-one clients. If they are like, I am really craving a pizza, I'm like, and if they're on a cut,
Yeah.
like, okay, let's manage that. Let's see. Let's go a couple of days. And if you're still craving it, we're going to find a way to work it in.
Right.
And because the more you ignore those, the worse it gets, leads to a massive binge. And especially if we've got an athlete who's trying to cut weight for a meet, this can be really dangerous territory.
That can derail the whole thing.
Exactly. So we have to figure out how can we work in and manage this craving, because sometimes they don't go away.
Right. Well, in intuitive eating, I would even say, like, if you have a craving, try to act on it that day. Like, because a craving is not a thing. It's not so overwhelming that it needs to be like an entire binge.
Right.
Like, I could have a craving for mac and cheese. That means I'm driving home from the gym and I'm thinking, man, what sounds good for dinner? Mac and cheese. Anything else I were to make that night besides mac and cheese would not satisfy me. And I would end up making mac and cheese anyway.
You would eat your regular dinner and then you would go make mac and cheese after.
Yes. And it took me a while to learn, like, oh, hey, dum-dum, why don't you just make mac and cheese and save yourself a full dinner's calories?
Yeah. Eat what you want.
Eat what you want. And that's the other part, is like learning how to act upon your cravings responsibly.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, and then incorporating your hunger cues, so that way I've got my mac and cheese. I'm not going to eat the whole box because it's like 1,000 calories. I'm going to take the third of it, that's a serving, see how my body's doing, and then either stop or maybe having a little bit more. But like, we associate cravings again with being this negative thing of like, you need to fight the cravings. But intuitive eating, you need to accept the cravings, you need to embrace the cravings, and figure out how to incorporate those cravings, what your body needs, into your daily routine. Yeah, whatever it is.
Yep.
Well, because it's so
figure out
dumb.
how to make it fit.
Right. And like, you don't need to have all these low cal, low fat, whatever concoctions that are made on the internet for, all these people in a cut when you're trying to repair your relationship with food. You need to eat what you need to eat.
Right.
And move on.
I talk about this in our Eat for Strength cut course.
Yes.
I talk about that. Like, just don't have the fat-free version of the full fat food that you really want, and don't have the sugar-free version of the super carby food that you really want. Like, find a way to work those things in, or just don't have them on a cut, because it's never going to satisfy you until sometimes we need to push like the emergency button in a cut and maybe have some of those things, but you save them for that. You don't eat them on a regular basis because it's never really satisfying that craving. Find a way to work that food in, even on a cut, or just don't have it.
Yeah.
Anyway, this isn't about a cut though.
So in intuitive eating, as I said, you need to not restrict anything, because restriction is going to lead or cause binge eating. And cravings are just a way for your body to tell you what it needs. And if it really needs some things, that's when you're experience those intense cravings. That's when those people who are on a cut and they're like, holy shit, if I don't get a slice of pie right now. Pie is obviously on my brain. I have cherry in the fridge right now. Got raspberry in the freezer. Good to
Nice.
go. But yeah, they're like, if I don't get pie right now, I'm gonna lose it. And there's a different. The more you restrict, the more you get those intense cravings. But you'll find as you do intuitive eating, the more you fuel your body, the more you give it
Nutritious.
thank you, nutritious food. Kristen's the smart one. I'm the asshole. The more you give it nutritious food and you feed it not put it in a caloric deficit, the less of these intense cravings that you're gonna get. Right. But I will say, so last night I almost had a binge, and it's because I'm super stressed about a few things. I'm not gonna get into them right now because they're unresolved. When they're unresolved, I'll talk about them. But I know that for myself, if it's some emotional issue I'm having and I feel that I need to binge, I now have the control to recognize I'm eating emotionally. I need to stop right now. I could eat this whole pie and nothing's going to be fixed.
Yes.
And so that's a huge cue for me. If you find yourself, binge, like starting a binge and not really knowing why, think about what your stress levels are. Think about what you could resolve outside of food that could help you fix your food. So like there's something I need to fix that's outside of my food, and I will no longer need to binge on pies.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I talk about this a lot with my one-on-one clients is that, like recognize, so you had a binge, go back, recognize like what was going on in that moment. How was I feeling? What did I think that this food was going to solve? And then realizing that the food didn't solve anything. So next time when you catch that happening, stop and ask yourself those questions. What's going on? What can I do that will actually help solve the issue as opposed to make me feel good at this moment and then make me feel bad later.
Right.
Yeah. And that's I think what emotional eating, like getting out of that cycle helps. I also think too, just like spending time at a caloric balance really helps. God,
yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because you can have some more of those foods. You can kind of understand what's happening with your body. And a lot of the times, like we said in the beginning, those binges stem from a steep caloric deficit. So you can sometimes get yourself out of it by just eating in a caloric balance for a while. And you don't recommend doing intuitive eating to cut weight. Like it's all about being in a caloric balance, right?
I would only recommend that if you have a coach who does intuitive eating who can help guide you through. Like I cut on intuitive eating, but that's because I was in such a good space of being able to control myself. And I almost did like the half track, half intuitive eating. So I would track like 75% of my day to make sure I got protein in, and then kind of just relax the last quarter of the day. But yeah, no, if you are coming out of any type of disordered eating, do not cut. Stop it. Just eat at maintenance or whatever your body tells you that is. Trust me, you'll figure it out. Your body will tell you what it needs once you learn how to listen to it. And then once you get your footing, once you get very comfortable, you can start looking into cutting. However, I still recommend trying to cut with macros. So just give yourself time. If you haven't repaired your relationship with food, then there's no point in cutting.
Right.
No point.